Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity Podcast, episode 168. Now, we are joined by a returning guest, a very special returning guest who is joining us. I'll introduce him in a minute, but it's all the way from north of San Francisco in a place called Mill Valley in the States. So we will join him in a second. It is 6 a.m. for him and it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon for us, but he is looking wide awake and we've already had some fun with some Star Wars pictures and things, which you will see online, I'm sure. Anyway, I will catch up with our usual hosts before I introduce our guest. Mr. Peter Lant, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Yeah, cracking conversation we've already had. So, I mean, no, it's going to be good where this is going, actually, because what our esteemed guest was talking about is, like we're saying, is a big thing at the minute. So, yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. How are you?
Excellent. I am very good indeed, thank you. And I think Paul is sat in his bed-sitting pattern. He's stroking a cat like a Bond villain. But how is Mr. Paul Bassett doing? You okay?
Not bad, not bad. No, our kitten has just been spayed, so we can get her out of the house and let her wander without the threat of a million kittens.
Okay. So you're just pacifying and comforting the kitten as we.
She seems fine, to be fair. Yeah. I mean, she was running around, a bit like a drunk. It's quite funny actually, trying to watch her jump from seats to like kitchen tops and things like that. You know, under the influence of whatever drugs they gave her. You know, get it to sit still. I had to catch her mid-air as she kind of jumped from a chair to the thing, knowing that she was going to headbutt the kitchen unit. So
we had a funny one the other day. I think Chris Denning. Sorry,
you shouldn't be laughing at a cat that's just gone through an operation, but it was quite fun.
Well, yeah, you could make millions on YouTube with that. Now, Chris Denning posted something the other day, any friend of the show, about you know, your dog will eat anything. They'll eat, like, you know, turds out in the bush and all that sort of stuff. As soon as you put a pill and a bit of food for it, it turns into Gordon Ramsay. Except my dog, because he had fleas, so we've got these tablets to give him. And we'd had sausages that night, and we'll always get one for him for the next day. So I just sliced it up a bit, gave him a bit of sausage, gave him the tablet, and then gave him this, and he was like, that's lovely, thank you. He'll just eat anything. It was brilliant.
Oh, that's good. Well, our guest today, like I said, is it's actually well, we'll introduce you first, then I'll give a bit of background. But it's actually Phil McDougall, originally from Wales, and like we just said, now residing in California. How are you doing, Phil?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me back. It's been great listening to this podcast over the last couple of years. Reminds me of home. Familiar voices, familiar faces.
Well, like we said, I mean, Phil was actually on. If you haven't listened to it, I mean, hopefully now we've got the website, healthoddity.com, which Mr. Peter Lant has been slaving over, and every single episode is on there in audio and video format. You can go back very easily and find episode 25, which Phil was on with us, which was all the way back. I checked before we came on, February 2021. So it's about 2.5 years ago when we were last on with Phil. But yeah, Phil's been doing some. So if I'd recommend go back to listen to that, because that gives really the background on Phil and his kind of career history and his training background and training philosophy and all that sort of stuff. So episode 25 is well worth a listen, because today we're going to kind of be talking about something a little bit more focused and something that he's working on more at the moment, and certainly for the last few years since we last spoke to him in February 2021. So yeah, I mean, it's something that's really interesting, but I'll kind of maybe hand over to Phil and just sort of, if you want to kind of tell us since we last spoke, kind of what you've been up to in life and, you know, with career and direction, and kind of what's led you to doing what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, well, thanks. So at the time I spoke to you last, I was a trainer with a handful of clients, having been living in this area for about a year, but it was mid-COVID. One of my clients, who we used to see about 5 times a week, was the CEO of a tech company in San Francisco. And in about January, February, pretty much about the time the last podcast was, January, February 21, he said to me, Phil, have you seen the show Billions? I was like, yeah. And he said, what do you think about being my Wendy? But instead of being more on like the psychological performance, just more on the health and fitness aspect of things. Would you consider coming on board and kind of being solely responsible for helping everyone in my company just make the right choices in terms of their health, fitness, and general wellness? I was like, oh, interesting, and sat on it for a couple of months, and then I gave him a thumbs up. I think it was like the end of March 2021. It's obviously a huge decision because that meant giving up all of my remote coaching, all of my little side hustles, all of my personal training. Big sacrifice, but it was amazing. The deciding on what my job title was going to be was a kind of a fun conversation because I got to basically choose. Like I remember having a conversation with my wife. I said, "Oh, I'll be happy with anything. I'll take company cheerleader for all I care," having zero corporate experience whatsoever. And she's like, "No, you have to have something that is actually useful for further on." So we went with wellness director. Yeah, I was the wellness director for a tech company startup. At the time, there were about 120 or something employees, and it was a hyper growth company. Ended up being 500 employees by the time that finished. So yeah, going into that, I guess it was I got the opportunity to reshape corporate wellness, because obviously going into that, I put a ton of research into what corporate wellness is and what somebody in my position would do within a company, and there aren't actually that many wellness directors. So then I just reflected on my previous 10 years or so of being a trainer and realized that, in fact, I do have quite a lot of corporate wellness experience. Over the last 10 years, all of my clients have jobs, and as their caring trainer, I care about the way that they spend their lives. And over the last 10 years, I've always spent, always shown quite a lot of interest in asking my clients like what they do. Like, so somebody would turn up and say, "Oh yeah, there's a corporate wellness program on at the moment." And I'd inquire all about it, and 10 years of inquiring and finding out about corporate wellness programs, I always find it incredibly unimpressive, right? It's like the standard, "Oh yeah, an ergonomic specialist came in, and then now we've all got these 800-pound chairs, and oh yeah, there's a walking challenge." And now in my experience, in my opinion, ergonomic chair is a contradiction in words. And you know, I would always be interested in like, well, how effective was it? And that was one of the things I was kind of interested in, is going in, is like these corporate wellness programs, what are they there for? Like, how actually effective are they? And like, again, what I've discovered was most corporate wellness programs would still say to this day that almost all corporate wellness programs from within companies are designed by and facilitated by people without much or any knowledge themselves about fitness and health and wellness. They are people who come from a human resources background, and it's just their job. They've been piled on. "Oh yeah, this person, make sure you get the corporate wellness program up and running, because we need to tell prospective employees that we have a corporate wellness program in place, because we need to get that box checked. So it was a bit of a sweeping statement. I don't want to make
No, I can
profound
agree.
sweeping statements. Say again.
I agree, because I used to take part in corporate wellness programs when I worked at Random House, and it was typically you got a banana as you walked in through the door, or an apple.
Right.
They managed to get some sponsorship from vitamin water, so there was like 10,000 bottles of vitamin water. You got one free, and then occasionally they'd send an email out saying, "We're doing a 1-minute row challenge, or 5-minute row challenge, or something like that. You've got to, whoever gets the fastest row in the company gets some prize." And I remember that happened once a year, and usually there was a walk where whoever was in senior management would walk with everyone around the river. That was that would happen once a year.
Yeah, it's
I spent 6 months trying to get a stand-up desk, and I never got one. So
right.
there's never any.
Yeah, budget's a huge thing, and that's another thing I had to learn hard, was how to speak to the financial department, because at the end of the day, and this is like the bottom line with all corporate wellness, is how will my investment in this program affect our bottom line? So at the end of the day, it's a company and everyone's there to work. And
I was going to say, because I'm getting into this now, because I used to work for a big company. I used to sit at a desk all day, but we had a there wasn't necessarily like corporate wellness, but it was a German firm, and there was a culture. On site there was a gym that was free to use for everybody. There was a running club within the company that somebody started up. They had a physio in the gym. There was a trainer in there who ran classes and stuff like that, and like step classes and all these sorts of things. But lots of people were moving. This was like 20 years ago as well. So it was kind of, I'd say, before its time. I mean, this obviously goes on. It just doesn't really go on, or it might have even regressed since then. I don't know. Because that's my experience of working in the corporate world, is there was a culture of actually keeping fit, which was really good. And it wasn't necessarily that people were all healthy, because everyone was still stressed, because it was an energy trading company. So it was quite stressful, but there was a decent culture of that. And I forgot what the original point was I was going to say, but it was that was just really interesting. I forgot what I was going to say now. Sorry.
It was about, I think you were going to, because Phil was just talking about at the end of the day, the company has to make money and everyone's there to work, and it's kind of what the benefit would be financially to have.
But if you look up, I've just been Googling the last few weeks about stats of how much it costs companies for illness and people being immobile and all of this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, when you say it's about the bottom line, it's like, how much does it cost you? If you look at it between how much does it cost you for this to pay me, and how much does it cost you for how sick people are, and what's the difference? And also, the more well people are, the more money you'll make anyway.
Exactly. And how much does it cost a company when they lose just one employee? So part of the part of the job there, and part of my research, was finding out, well, why employees leave, and putting systems in place to kind of help avoid that. But yeah, I went with that approach when it came to my initial salary negotiations, because I was kind of pretty firm on, look, I've just literally given up my entire life. If this goes south for me, I can't just transition into another corporate role. I've got to build up a whole network of self-employed business from scratch, which could take almost a year to do. So whatever my salary is, it's got to cover me for a year afterwards. So I was like, so I had a number in mind, and the person that I was negotiating salary with, he was a professional kind of negotiator in the company, and my approach was, I basically went with that corporate wellness approach of, well, how much would it cost the company if just 20% of the company were working 2% more productively. And that cost alone, like, more than doubled my salary. And I said, well, if I come into the company, I'm going to do this, and this. I'm going to get at least 30% of the company involved in my wellness programs, which is going to help their productivity by this. So, I mean, I should be asking for more. It was like,
yes.
It's
like you've been in the corporate world for years. That is brilliant.
It was like,
fast.
He was also bigger.
Say again. Oh,
you were also bigger.
But the fact that, I mean, I was there because I was the CEO's trainer was, I'm sure, quite a huge deal. But that point as well made it so that I pretty much, it was the most ideal possible. I mean, I've only had one employed job. Take out the Royal Marines, that was an employed job. Aside from that, I've been a self-employed fitness and massage therapist person for the last since 2011. So this was like my first ever job. I was really nervous going in, because I was like, oh my God, I can barely even work my printer at home. I'm going into a tech company full of Stanford graduates. Like, wow, I felt like such an intruder. I felt like I shouldn't be there. I was like super nervous. But then something that gave me a ton of confidence was, like, as you know, the people that you work with, as brilliant as they might be in their own fields, you still get these brilliant minds who think that avocados are bad for you because they're full of fat, It's like, okay, well, I'm just going to stay in my lane and do what I know. And hopefully that'll help people. And just one other thing on that point is just understanding, like, staying in my lane. Like, what is my lane? I understand about brain health. I understand about happiness. I understand about the physiological factors that help people control stress. I'm no therapist. I can't go into and help a company from a well-being therapy point of view or a psychological therapist point of view, but I can help people control all of the physiological inputs that go into their stress bucket and create stress. I mean, that's literally been my job for the last 10 years. Okay, so I can do this. And then there's this one classic case that I've used a couple of times when it comes to kind of selling people and the idea that all of the inputs that go into our nervous system affect our performance. So just from a performance point of view, as a triathlete, you know that everything, sleep, diet, everything affects your ability to perform. And the same goes when you're working in a very fast-paced tech company who are growing at a 100 employees a month rate. It was 100 employees a month at one point, and it kept fluctuating between that. It was a huge rate, because it was 100 employees when I started, 120, and it was 500 when I finished, and that was just like a year later. Anyway, so classic case being, there's this Stanford graduate who her morning routine was wake up in the morning, open her laptop, get plugged straight in. Because of the way that the company is set up with like all the time zones in the world all working together in the same team, is literally always there's something to do as soon as you wake up and something to do as soon as you go to bed. She would stay in her bed on her laptop working for the first 4 to 5 hours of every day. She would go and have a very unhealthy processed lunch, and then she would go back to her room and carry on. And then if she felt like it, which very rarely happened, then she would go out for a walk at the end of the working day, and then basically watch YouTube and Netflix in the evenings. I'm like, how are those inputs affecting your amazing Stanford educated brain. Like how it, like, imagine in what that brain could achieve if you put the right inputs in there. And you started. So I went into the company kind of, you know, a little bit like when you walk into like a fitnessy type thing and it's like, yay, let's all do this. And, you know, everyone's there. It's an easy sell in the fitness world because everybody that I've ever worked with before were either paying to be there to learn. They're already drinking the Kool-Aid versus going into a company. And this was one of the first big problem, like the obstacles that I had to overcome. It was kind of okay, here I am. It was like 100% of my life and my time was, my job is to help you. And I was like, okay, so I'm gonna exactly. And I realized in like a matter of a few weeks that most people didn't even care. And I was like, huh, okay. So my job became more along the lines of inspiration and education than actually, you know, the mechanics that we know as trainers and massage therapists of actually helping people. So
I was just going to ask, Phil, was there a percentage? It may have been a small percentage, but was there, I don't know, because in the general population, the number across the US and the UK, kind of if you average it out, is probably 10% of the population actually do some kind of exercise or training or sport and stuff like that. You know, just across the general population. So was there, just as this is a big company, was there maybe like 10% of the company who were receptive, who wanted to get involved and who you spent time with, and, you know, who it was quite, you know, you were doing what you wanted to do? Yeah, there was a small percentage that was,
easily. There was like the hardcore, like Kool-Aid drinkers of everything that I was putting out there. It was like, you know, it was as though I found my own little group of personal training clients and group clients. But then I was like, and that was probably about 10% of the company. Now, consider that within every company, it depends on the company, depends on like, so this is a tech company, they're generally quite young. Other companies like education establishments or governments are going to be a bit older. So you got to kind of looking at what the different the demographics of the company. But in this one particularly, you know, there's a good like 30%, maybe 40% who themselves actively engaged in exercise, which is above the general average, because average it's about 20-25% of people like between the age of 18 and 60 engage in regular physical activity. For the most part, most other people are pretty sedentary, and like something like 60% of that population are completely sedentary. So it's similar within the workplace, but a little bit more just because of the demographic. The more kind of the working professionals tend to be a bit more active. So anyway, you've got, so if I had my 10% of hardcore followers who basically did everything, I'm like, well, my job here isn't to actually help them. My job here is to inspire the rest of them. So I started, you know, and this was another massive benefit of having the CEO as like my chum. Nobody really touched me. I was able to completely and utterly work without any interference or justification or anything. Anything that I wanted to do, it was like, yeah, sure. It's like, okay, thanks. So I started to do, I did a weekly wellness webinar on basically, now being careful to stay in my lane. I'm no dietitian. I can't speak to people about anything particularly technical, but I would treat every single wellness webinar as though it's just something I'm talking to my clients about, just the absolute basics of gut health. and the basics about what sleep is, why it's so important, and what you can do to help it. Stress management was a huge one, and that's something I did quite a bit of, and coming from my own background of having stress issues myself. It was very anecdotal, but I would go into it with like I say, staying in my lane, talking about the physical aspects that affect stress. I can't talk to people about helping them with the psychological aspects, but as probably a lot of people listening understand, stress is a physiological response. So of course, if you change the physiological inputs, and that the one thing that is making somebody stressed and sending them into the red and creating that burnout, or the number of little things, I can guarantee that if you don't focus on those and instead focus on the things that you can control, then the whole level comes down, and all of a sudden you're less stressed and in control. So talking about helping people sleep better, helping people helping people become more hydrated, gut health, get people walking more, moving more, changing their ergonomic setup. As you know, I'm kind of obsessed with biomechanics and that sort of thing, but being over in this hunched position, I mean, putting people into a triple flexion fetal position was one of the medieval torture devices, right? Because putting somebody into the flexed position all day, every day, causes psychological trauma. But yet,
they still do that now, don't they? With the like stress positions and stuff like that
right.
in army training and SAS training and all that sort of stuff, don't they? It's how yeah. If you get caught in battle or whatever, that's how that's what they do to you, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, and
it's like stress positions for the SAS, getting people to go into a deep squat. If they've never been in a deep squat, trying to get anyone to try and make conversation, smile, do anything. If they've never, broken parallel with their squat, it can be incredibly stressful, can't it?
Yeah, and yeah, but yet we choose to sit in these positions, or I say we choose. I would say people who have always been employees, and people who they've always had desk jobs. That's normal to them, and it was kind of my job to help them understand. Well, okay, let's look at the science and the research, because I've learned that absolutely everything that you say, unlike speaking to like your mate, personal training client, you can't just say, oh yeah, try this. You've got to, when speaking to like the masses, everything's got to be like very well researched and backed up, so you're not talking pseudoscience. But there's overwhelmingly compelling evidence suggesting that, like, we know that sedentary chair-based behavior is bad for us. I could even present a solid argument that sedentary chair-based behavior mixed with the standard American diet, the mixture of those two is the reason why almost all musculoskeletal pain exists. Almost.
Do you think, it was interesting what you said earlier, and this popped into my head, of the corporate wellness thing, and it results in an ergonomically designed chair. We'll spend £800 on one of those, or $800 or whatever it is for one of those, and then that's problem solved. And then your average employee thinks, right, the company's looking after me because now they're helping me sit better. Do you think there was like a bit, or there still is a big culture of that? And then there's obviously a lot of money in that for people who design chairs. And there was that one specific chair, wasn't it? Eon chair or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
Everyone's got one of those all of a sudden because they're the best ergonomic, but it's still sitting in it.
Yeah. So that, I would say, I kind of came up with a system lucky enough to kind of design the whole approach from scratch, and I call it the 6 pillars of corporate wellness, and one of them is ergonomics. And when I'm talking about corporate wellness, I'm talking about the physical aspects of corporate wellness. But yeah, one of them is ergonomics, and that's a really important one, because like this is where people spend a third of their life. You know, so if a brand new personal training client comes to me and wants, you know, let's say 3 sessions a week, let's say 2 sessions a week, because that's more common, 2 sessions a week, my little speech is always, if you have 2 sessions a week, that's still 166 hours of the week that goes untouched. And me being a 44-year-old trainer, I'm only in this game to help people improve. As soon as somebody flatlines, it's not, they don't need me anymore, or I get bored quite easily. I'm only in this for improvements. And I give every new client that little speech, and I say, how much you improve is down to you and the changes that you make in your life. And I'm here to help you with those. So, yeah, and that's the same with ergonomics. So if we spend a third of our life in this fetal position, I would say that the biggest casualty physiologically of that is, so being in this position, then that essentially compresses the abdomen. Fact, and this is anecdotal fact, almost all people who work behind a desk for a living are upper chest breathers, i.e. 20,000 times a day, their upper chest is moving outwards and their shoulders are moving upwards with every single breath. And if you think, what is one of the most common work or desk related injuries? It's like necks. And people will go to the chiropractor and spend a whole ton of money on getting their back sorted. And it's like, well, there's no point in that if you're then going to go just back and just put yourself in the same environment that created the problem in the first place. So the breathing pattern, and this is my opinion, and I share this opinion, I think, with a lot of very well experienced fitnessy and movement people. I think I originally learned it from Perry Nicholson, or he planted the idea in my mind. But the compressive nature of being sat in a seat, because our brains take the path of least resistance, they realize, well, it's actually not very functional. It's not the path of least resistance. Continue breathing with the diaphragm, the main breathing muscle. Now, when that diaphragm is contracting and relaxing 20,000 times a day, that supports the entire midsection. That is what creates the stability that we need for everyday athleticism and everyday life. Instead, we put ourselves in this position pretty much all day, every day, from about the age of 6 onwards. That's kind of when chair abuse starts. And then when we get up and try and do something athletic in our 30s, 40s, 50s, all of a sudden, then, you know, something goes pop, because this diaphragm has stopped working. So one of the biggest casualties of being in the fetal position all day, every day, is the way that it disengages the diaphragm, and people learn that breathing in the upper chest is more efficient. And that causes so many problems in terms of the dysfunction that is created throughout the whole of the body. I don't like the word dysfunction, but instability, I should say. So, yeah.
I was going to say, I was talking with someone about this probably about an hour and a half ago. Someone who's like, he's in his 60s and he was a rower and he's one of my clients and he's getting stronger. And I was just saying it's because I was talking to him basically that you were coming on and we were going to be talking about this sort of stuff. And in my, again, I'm this is anecdotal, but most people, I think, when they decide in their 40s, 50s, or late 30s or whatever, like, I haven't done anything for years, I'm going to get strong, I'm going to get fitter, they go out for a run. And I'm not demonizing running and all of that sort of stuff, but if they've not got the diaphragm, they're breathing up here and they haven't used their joints for ages, then they're going to go and put 7 times their body weight through each ankle or knee or whatever. Right. If that's I don't even know if it is 7 times. It might even be more than that. Like step after step after step with the amount of so breathing, taking more breaths than you said earlier, than the 20,000 a day into their chest, and possibly being overweight as well. So putting even more weight through their joints and then wonder why they get hurt. And it's like, and trying to explain that to people who don't want to hear it is just, it's really hard, which is why it's great that you're here, because you're going to keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it.
Well, the connection between the way that we breathe and the way that our brains then deposit fat underneath our skin, this is another approach that I sometimes take, because let's be honest, some people literally only train for aesthetics, and they or I'll put this another way, because there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with somebody who's just starting out, and the reason that they start out is because they want to change their body composition. Super common, very respectable, amazing reason to start. But consider that body composition is a lot dictated, obviously, by movement and exercise and food choices. But if you're taking 20,000 panic breaths a day, if you see a tiger, then this is a panic breath. We're breathing with the upper chest, and this puts the nervous system, the autonomous nervous system, into sympathetic mode. And when the nervous system's in sympathetic mode, then why does the sympathetic nervous response exist? It exists for survival. So in a survival situation, you need to put fat underneath your skin because you're going to need it for the ensuing survival situation. So many people are constantly telling their nervous systems that they're in survival mode, waking up first thing in the morning and checking the phones. That's another huge part of stress management, is just trying to make people make good choices in terms of all of the acoustics inputs that go into their brains, when their brains should be in nice slow theta wavelength when they wake up. But all of a sudden, bam, they go straight into their phones. Phones instantly put them into sympathetic nervous response, which is kind of, the breathing comes into this like huge amount. So another thing I used to do was taking people through guided breathing. And any of the remote employees could plug in from anywhere and join in on, I used to call it meditation for non-spiritual people, because personally, it was a barrier for entry into meditation for me for a very, very long time, because meditation it has such a strong spiritual connotation to it, So I used to run guided breathing for non-spiritual people. It was all about the physiology of, okay, let's just teach people how to activate their diaphragms and their pelvic floors and their transverse abdominis. And if you put people in that situation where they're focusing so much on all of this, instant parasympathetic nervous response. So anyway,
So Phil, I was just wondering, so you were the wellness director of this sort of tech startup in California, and what kind of, you've sort of said that you were there for a certain amount of time, and then you're not there now, and you've now gone into this Wellforce, which is the kind of the thing that you're really doing at the moment. And what was the transition from the corporate wellness director into what you're working on now, and what is it? Because it sounds like you've taken a lot of what you were doing in the corporate wellness sector into what you're doing now. But like you mentioned, I think near the start, where you said, I think it's the same thing with education in a way. When children are at school because they have to be at school all the time, they're not always going to be engaged. But as an adult, if you choose to go back into education, you're there then, you are then there because you've chosen to. And like you said, if people are paying for a service, if people are voluntarily getting involved in something, they're far more likely to adhere to it and be interested to it and stick to it. So what was the transition from the wellness director role into what you're doing now?
Yeah, well, so after a year of putting all my heart and soul into being a good wellness director for at that point 500 employees, I managed to get between 40 to 60% of the company actively engaged in all the wellness stuff that I was doing. And now, as a general standard in all corporate wellness programs, if you hit 20%, then that box is ticked and it's seen to be a successful corporate wellness program. But I wasn't happy with that. And so I got to the point, I put all these things in place where 40 to 60% of the company were getting involved in the things that I was doing and getting a ton of good feedback on productivity, creativity, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, great. However, over the course of 1 week, 500 of us lost our jobs. And I don't want to go into the all of the whys surrounding that, but it was about it was obviously huge financial reasons, and yeah, basically the company imploded. And
was it because they're taking on this wellness director who said, I want this much money?
you laugh, but possibly, one of the criticisms was that the company was doing irresponsible spending, and I'm under no illusion that hiring a reasonably expensive wellness director is more expensive than running a lot of wellness programs. And now one of the keynote speeches that I now give is 5 reasons why you don't need a wellness director, because it's all the best and most powerful corporate wellness programs that I kind of created and implemented are all nowhere near the amount of cost that they were paying me. So anyway, it was kind of, so yeah, you could laugh, you could joke about that, but anyway, so company imploded. I remember sitting in my back garden with a beer with one of my friends who was a software engineer, and we were just talking about what we're going to do next. Now, one of the things that I used to do within FAST, that was the name of the company, FAST, was provide movement snacks. And that's something that I been trying to send my clients pretty much for as long as I've been a trainer. I have been trying to get my desk-based clients just to move a little bit. Now, I'm not going to start trying to get people to stand up, because stand-up workstations, they have to be set up in the right way. Otherwise, they're arguably worse for you than sitting down. I wrote a whole blog about how to optimize a stand-up workstation so it's actually helping people and so it's comfortable. But most people, even like government agencies that say, when you stand up, do this, is so wrong. And like I said, I wrote a blog about that, so I won't go into it. But for as long as I've been a trainer, I've wanted to kind of get my clients moving, because I think that if you take that massive input of sedentary behavior, being stuck behind a desk, which a lot of people can't control because that's their job, but what can they do? And there are 2 things that are the biggest helpful things that those people can do, and that's drink more water and do regular and frequent movement snacks. Moving your joints and putting that input into their brains opening up their spine. Joseph Pilates that said, you're only as old as your spine. But yeah, movement snacks have been like a bit of a kind of been my thing, I guess, ever since I initially hearing the term from Perry Nicholson, like back in 2014. I think initially, even before then, Original Strength guys have been working in movement snacks. But so kind of since then, I've started a little company called Wellforce. Provides corporate wellness services, provides keynote speeches, provides off-site services. I've done a whole ton of off-sites and just turning up and doing wellness-y activities that actually make a difference and hopefully educate and inspire. But one of the key things we've done is my business partner is Eric Schulte, and we have developed an app. It's free and it's on the Apple Store. We don't have a Google Play version yet. We've only got a few users because we only launched a few weeks ago. It's the Wellforce movement snack vending machine. And essentially,
I saw that because I just said to
that.
listeners, no, I signed up for that earlier today actually, because you sent us the link for it, and I'm really impressed with it. It's great, and I love the ones that I've looked at. I've just looked at a couple where and like you say, I saw when it says the movement snack vending machine, and I thought that was great. And then when you actually the videos that it shows you how to do the exercises, I think it starts off in an office and then it moves it to like a peaceful sort of outdoor area. The one that I looked at, the desk is sort of in a forest or something. Right. Yeah, it's really cool. It's like really.
The idea is so if anybody gives this app a go, the whole point of it is so I can help my clients. I just want something to get people to move. And I've tried so many things over the years. Text messages, they get very old very quickly. Imagine sending each one of your clients a text message and move all the time throughout the day. Impossible.
While you're trying to tell them to get off their phones so much. Honestly, this is the problem with all of this stuff. The more you try to put in place, the more it infects your life and stresses you out, right? So exactly. It's hard.
Yeah. So within the app, basically you plug in, it works a little bit like an Apple alarm system. So again, I apologize for everybody who might want to try this. We don't have an Android version yet, but it's out on the Apple. So you plug in your preferences if you just want to do push-ups, you can go and do push-ups. If you want to help your neck, then you can just do neck. It's got a ton of preferences. I try to make it as easy as possible to manage those preferences. And then you go in and set the times, and the app just runs. So to your point about it changing scene, the idea is you're stuck there at your desk. You're between tasks, so you get this prompt that comes up. There's a desktop version and a mobile version. The prompt comes up, pa-ching, time for a quick movement snack. And if you hit the prompt yes, then the video is me or one of two others who are working there at their desk. The idea is you can click your fingers, imagine that you're anywhere just for like 1 to 2 minutes and just do some kind of movement that decompresses your spine, or there's all the million different ways that you can move your body. So we've got initial beta users who've been using it now for a year who love it, and they use it every single day, and I can see that they use it and it's awesome. So I don't know. I really think it's helpful and something that my business partner, who's an absolute genius and makes all this stuff sound really easy when I'm talking to him, I'm like, huh? Next thing we're kind of coming out with is basically a Zoom version. So at the beginning of a Zoom call, you go in and there's going to be the Wellforce Zoom app, So in that kind of sometime, in very busy companies, people are on Zoom calls, sometimes like 8 hours a day, every day. It's like boom, 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 boom. Imagine in that 2 minutes between, or 3 minutes or 5 minutes, at the beginning of a Zoom call, you can go to the movement snack vending machine and a little screen will appear basically with me guiding the people through an engaging feel good movement snack, just to kind of boost engagement and get everyone feeling good on the call. But anyway, so that's what's coming next. But I just I hope that in the meantime people find the mobile app and desktop app useful.
It was
I'm
so easy.
going to look at the desktop actually because I'm on Android. What's funny is you've got a couple of Androids behind you. You should have an Apple behind you. Or is this you saying, I'm getting there? What I love about it is it's like using technology for good, isn't it? Because obviously there's loads of different technology's got us now, and it's here, and it's here to stay. And I don't have any notifications on my phone. They're all switched off. Obviously the light flashes, but all I do is just turn my phone over because we know how the brain works, right? And if you see a flashing light,
you
go, I'll ignore that. And you don't. You just, and then you have to go and look at it. So at least with yours, it's great because it's a notification to say to people, you've got to move. Because then they'll sit and realize, I've been sitting here for 2 hours and didn't even that went past like in 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
And I've been speaking to a lot of people about this, and people working from home, like you were saying, that lady who gets up or doesn't even get up, just gets a laptop out, and the whole sunlight before screen light thing isn't there. She might not even get outside. There's a guy on the same street as me who now works from home, and he became a client of mine, but then he left after COVID had finished and everything else opened up. But his wife was saying he'd disappear into his office and stay there for like 8 hours. He wouldn't come out, or come out and get a banana and a cup of tea and then go back in again. And I was like, you don't even get that in an office. At least you get up and walk around and chat to people maybe and have a bit of time off. But when you're at home on your own and you're kind of focused on something, you can be there for literally 8 hours, can't you, without moving at all? So
yeah, and I'll share with you guys the blog I wrote. It's like the super simple. If you want to set up the optimal desk environment that is going to basically promote your ability to play with your grandkids in the decades to come, and it's literally that simple. Because we know fact, if you spend 8 hours a day sitting in a chair 5 times a week, and then all the other times you're sitting down, it's literally disability. It's crazy. I've seen it so many times. I've seen how it stops my clients hitting their goals in terms of performance, how it stops people from running, how it stops people from lifting, all of that. So yeah, I'm kind of passionate about this, and I don't even feel like we're selling anything because the app's free. We literally just want to help as many people as we can. So I think that movement snacks are like the key to avoiding most of the problems that come of sitting on our asses all day.
I think it's great, and I think that like I say, the actual app was first of all, it was just so easy to find. You know what I mean? It was easy to find. It was easy to download, and I just got in and within a couple of minutes, I was able to look at videos, and like you say, it asks you, what do you want to focus on? And it could be like upper body mobility, lower body mobility. I think guided breathing was on there as well, like the breathing kind of practice that we spoke about. What equipment you've got, if you've got like a broomstick or a dowel, and because we've obviously known you for a long time, and still one of the best resources that I use still over and over is your bent press manual that you wrote, which is it's just all the regressions and progressions and all the mobility stuff in that is just so good. And the whole windmill sequence with the broomstick, is it's great. So the fact that you've now got this in an app with easy, just short videos that people can watch and help people, I think is absolutely fantastic. It's great.
Well, thank you.
Does anyone hear me?
Yeah, we can.
There's a fundamental problem, I think, that we have to overcome at some point. I've got 2 young kids, both at school. They do PE once a week. They that's all that's programmed. You know, obviously they've got play, and when they're very young, you know, they're sitting on the mats, and you know, movement's kind of baked into a 4-year-old's life. You know, it's you're not going to get a 4-year-old boy sit still. You know, it's just not going to happen. But as soon as they start going through the system, it becomes more rigid, and we're really, as a society, only really valuing movement once something's gone wrong. So there's some fundamental error or some fundamental lack of value. It's not seen as a priority. We have all our systems set up at the front end wrong, so that we all exist as trainers, your app, you know, corporate wellness, things like that. These are solving a problem that shouldn't really be there and hadn't historically been a problem, and we're having to solve it because there's a lack of value around movement. You know, we often see, you know, it's the classic kind of jocks versus geeks kind of thing, that people who move are seen as, you know, it's seen as less valuable than your brain. And we've known for thousands of years that unless you have both, you're not going to be the best version of yourself. So I don't know where the problem is you try and go through government, and it's the slowest thing ever. You try and change at the top, as Jamie Oliver found, and you end up hitting brick walls. And so I think it's, you know, in a way, running a fitness business is quite a valiant business. It's almost like you set up shop in a headwind of a storm, and you know you know that the storm's not going to stop, but you're still doing it because you're bloody minded and you want to actually help people. I'm positive because I love movement. You know, I love helping people and I like the individuals things, but I find it difficult to I don't really think in a macro way about like making global changes or anything like that, because it seems so difficult to change the culture, particularly as we become more, I don't know, more addicted to our devices. That, you know, the virtual world is coming. I don't know if it'll go, maybe technology will get to the point where it's so integrated into us we don't have to sit at a desk anymore. I don't know. Maybe you know, it's like with whaling. People used to use whale blubber as oil because it was the best way to burn for oil. And it wasn't until we dug for oil and found that that was a better solution to lighting that eventually we stopped whale hunting. So it wasn't until a technological breakthrough that we broke through to get to the next thing. So I don't know if really we're holding the tide, fighting the good fight, until maybe technology gets so good that really we don't have to be set behind a desk. We don't have to be on our phones. We don't have to be doing that because technology is more integrated into what it is to be human. I don't know. It's just an interesting thing. And I part of me doesn't know what that answer is. All I can do is just focus on helping a couple of people, you know. I don't know what you guys think of that.
I was going to say, I think that when we spoke about the ergonomic chairs and things, that's really just a way for a company to enable you to sit down for longer without moving, so you can do more work, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's basically just kind of shackling you to the desk so you can do more without moving. But no, I think, like you say, talking about things like changing the world and changing the culture. I can't remember. It's probably like Gandhi or someone, you know, Martin Luther King. But, you know, to change the world, you've really just got to change yourself, haven't you? And then to change the life of your family and a few people around you and those that you have, you know. And you can do that now with something like an app. You can affect more people more widely than your geographical, you know, community, I suppose. But it's really just affecting the people that you can help. And you need to start there, don't you, really, rather than trying to burden yourself, I think, with changing the culture or the country or the world. Because, yeah, I think as Phil found out, going into a company of, you know, 100 to 500 people, it's a massive task to try and get people to engage if they don't want to engage. And you can do some good without a shadow of a doubt, but dealing with tens of millions of people or hundreds of millions of people is it's above our pay grade, I think.
It's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard to do.
We're empowered though to, you know, as people who have clients and a little bit of influence over people's lives. We have more connection to people than most doctors. You know, most doctors don't get to see people 3 times a week or 2 times a week or whatever. It's like, I think that with great power comes great responsibility. I'm joking. Now, we have all of this service to service connection with the people that want to make changes in their lives. So I think we do have a really, like, as fitness professionals, I think is a great place to be. And I think that yeah, it's kind of depressing if you think of it on a global point of view. And yes, it does need to be like this massive shift in the way that we live our lives. Look at what they're doing in Singapore. No time to go into that, but kind of amazing. And that's coming down systemically from the government. And that is literally changing. That's it. Now Singapore is now like the place in the world where people live the longest as a result of the changes they put into place a few years ago. But anyway, so yeah, aside from the paradigm shift that needs to come from the government downwards and not feeding people full of bad, low quality information, then I think, yeah, we are super empowered as trainers and fitness professionals. I think is a really exciting place to be, because we really can help people.
And I think as well, even just like I say, things are different now where you may just be able to, affect people in your town. We've been doing this podcast obviously for, 168 weeks now. And the fact that you're on here this week, we speak to people, we know we've got people listening in Canada, in the US, in Australia, all across Europe, obviously, all over the UK and things. So the message gets out there, that's the thing, I suppose. We do this for 1 hour a week, and hopefully I know that a lot of people who listen to this sit behind a desk most of their day, so this hopefully, and I think it will have been really beneficial and thought-provoking for them. And hopefully they go on to, if they use an Apple device, they go on and they check out the Wellforce app, because it's just another, it is a way that we can help people and get the message out there. And like you say, if people want to change, I think the big thing is that personal responsibility of not waiting for not almost, which kind of goes against, we've been talking about corporate wellness, but not waiting for someone else to do it for you or the company you work for to put it in place, but to take that initiative and do something yourself. And especially with lots of people working at home still, something like the Wellforce app and movement snacks is a big way forward. So yeah, thanks Phil for coming on and talking to us about it and introducing us to it, because it's exciting, I think. And I'll be really interested to see, hopefully people listen to this and check out the app, and we see where it goes over the next over the next few months, and especially the Zoom thing you mentioned as well, which is really interesting as well.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for having me. And can I suggest we finish with a 20-30 second movement snack?
You can indeed. It's the cat off of your lap, Paul.
I'll try and do it in a way that people who can't see us. So wherever you are, sitting, standing, doesn't matter. Sit as tall as you can. And say the crown of your head is as tall as possible. Now pull your chin back as far as it'll go and try to look at the top of your sternum. So you're pulling your head backwards, you're pulling your ears upwards, and you're making your best double chin possible. Now pull your shoulders down away from your ears, palms facing forward, and just holding this position for 3, pulling your chin back, 2, lengthening the back of the neck, 1, and roll off the shoulders. We just decompressed your cervical spine.
That feels lovely. That's sorry. Pete,
my head's going to fall off.
Pete, as we wrap up, anything you'd like to say as we close?
A thought right at the end with that little conversation that we've all just had together. Right at the end there is simple and consistent. Simple and consistent. It's like that with absolutely everything. Your CEO guy, when he was setting up his business, he'll have been simple and consistent doing what he was doing, and then it starts to grow and grow and grow. People do simple and consistent things like sit down all day at work, and it has the effect it has. So if you're simple and consistent with movement snacks, it can reverse that effect. And simple and consistent in being influential to family and friends and all of that And so this podcast is the example. We started it during COVID, something to do, because we all had time on our hands, and we've done 168 episodes every, like, week after week after week after week, simple and consistent, and it's getting bigger and more people listen to it. And then we're getting people like Phil back on it, and, you know, getting his simple and consistent solution out to the world as well. So it's simple and consistent is what I've taken from that.
Excellent. Paul, anything you'd like to say as we wrap up?
2019, I set up a company, a wellness company for corporate wellness, and I set it up with a financial advisor, because it was one of those. Eventually, we had a board of people that we took on board with HR directors and stuff like that, and it was going well. Then COVID hit, and we all had to kind of literally everyone involved had to consolidate their own businesses, so it kind of put on the back burner. But one of the things that actually leads to wellness as well, which you kind of forget, is about financial freedom. I'd probably, if there's anyone who's stressed, it's probably about money. So, you know, it's like we you know, the weight of financial responsibility, outside parenting responsibility, outside the work responsibility, that was an area which I think as well. I mean, I just think that I see it so much in my clients. Yes, the physical side, they're sat at desks all day, but a lot of them also, the reason they're working so hard is because they need money, or they want the money, or they've got lifestyles to maintain and things like that. So that's an area also, I think, where you can have that spine hygiene, you know, you can have good quality food, but you also have your financial hygiene. And if you get those things, that's an area which I think isn't often looked at, because most people aren't educated in finance. And it took me, well, I'm doing that myself at the moment, just to kind of take stress off my shoulders. That's an area which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah,
definitely. Phil, if people, first of all, the first thing, obviously, I suppose Wellforce app is a big one for people to check out. That's a big sort of call to action from today, which I would recommend people doing. If people want to kind of follow you and what you're doing, and just kind of keep an eye on things that you're doing in general, is there a social media platform that you like to use, or would it be purely people going towards the Wellforce direction now?
Yeah, if for my general goings on in terms of personal training and strength, then they can just follow me on Instagram, phil.mcdougall. Otherwise, you can follow Get Wellforce on Instagram. I think Wellforce are going to be more active on LinkedIn though. So yeah, follow me or Wellforce on LinkedIn. And get
Wellforce on
Get Wellforce.
Get Wellforce. So I don't follow that one, so I'm just going to find it. Get Wellforce.
We've just started it, so I'm going to start putting out some hopefully useful content. But yeah, be more active on LinkedIn, really, I guess, with Wellforce, because it's more on the corporate side.
Yeah, no.
You've now got 55 followers.
You've just got another one. I've just gone on there as well. Yeah. Okay. No, that's great. Get Wellforce, yeah, and we follow you from everything. Brilliant, fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Phil. And it's lovely. And like you say, thanks for, like we say, last time you were on was episode 25. So 2.5 years later, you're back on, and it's been great. And I love the Star Wars background as well. We had some fun with that at the start, with some photos and stuff that we'll put out, which will be good. But no, thank you so much for joining us, Phil. I really hope Wellforce it's a success, and we'll be sharing that. Obviously this will be going out in a few weeks' time. We'll share links to Wellforce and everything, and share it widely. And thanks for coming back on.
Thank you, and thank you so much for doing what you do and keeping me connected with all the people that I love and follow in the UK. I really appreciate you guys getting together every week and having awesome guests on, and thanks for including me. And I'll see you in episode 300 and something.
Okay, you will do. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening again. Thank you, and do please like, share, subscribe, leave a review if you're listening or watching on a platform that allows you to do so. And we are on a drive at the moment to increase our YouTube subscribers. So if you can go on YouTube and find us on there, Health Oddity, just give us a subscribe on there. And if you'd like to join the Facebook group, just go into group, search Health Oddity, and one of us will let you in. We will be back next week, where we will be talking to, gone out my head, Pete, who have we got next week?
I don't know.
Ah!
You've been lining them all up. Eh?
We have Will Polston on next week.
We do, yes.
Author of the book North Star Thinking, which
I'm about 2/3 of the way through now. I've never finished it.
Yeah, and I've read it. So we'll be back for episode 169 next week with Will Polston. So we will see you then. Take care, have a fantastic week, and bye-bye.